Okay, let's get cracking. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to start with the following that apologize for anyone that I insult. I was once giving over what I'm about to share with you, and somebody got very insulted because the story that he told me, I'll tell you, we're going to start backwards and we'll go forwards, that he was a heroin addict. He was involved, for those who are familiar with heroin, you shouldn't be, but if you are, he was a heroin addict, and he overcame it, which if anyone knows a little bit about heroin, you'll know is, I'm told, let's say, quite a challenge to overcome. Is that right? Is that accurate? Does people know what I'm talking about? My understanding is that with heroin, you have dealers that will give it out for free because they know you're coming back, right? Once you're hooked, you're hooked. Therefore, what I'm about to speak about now, I spoke about, and he was insulted because he disagreed and actually lived up to what I'm about to share with you. If you live up to it as well, fantastic. Then it should just be review. If you don't live up to it, so then this is for you. Here we go. I'm going to ask a question which is going to seem rhetorical, but it's not rhetorical. I want an actual answer. Is there anyone here? And if you don't answer the question, I'm going to pick on you. If you want that, then don't answer. Right? Here we go. Is there anyone here that would like to be better than they are today? Yeah.
Obviously.
Oh, it's obvious, is it? Interesting. What do you say?
Sure.
Okay, I think that means everyone? Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, so everyone wants to be better than they are today. I don't believe you.
No, but without putting in the effort.
Okay, good. Very good. Okay, so that, you know, yeah, well, it's not going to talk about the pills, but good. You're kind of answering what I'm going to say in a minute, that I guess what we would, it's semantics, but we'll put the word out there. We'll say, the question was, does anyone here want to be better than they are today? All right, that was the question. Does anyone want to be better than they are today?
Yeah.
Now, in yeshivish terminology, we have what's called want to want. Has anyone ever heard that before? Right? In other words, do you want to pray in the morning? I want to want it. You know, like in theory, teóricamente, I see that it's worthwhile. Prácticamente, no sé. Right? I get it, that I want to, but do you want? Now, I heard a statement once which, for me, was very depressing. For other people, it may not be. That depends on how you live your life. For me, it was depressing. The statement I heard is, the way that you want to live, you're living right now. Now, for me, that was depressing. Does anyone understand why that would be depressing? If not for me, maybe, misery loves company, so maybe you also. What's that?
A reality check.
A reality check, meaning you're living how you want. Don't say, I want X, because if you actually wanted X, you would be doing it. The way that you act, you behave, and you live is what we call a gilui milsa. It's a revealing factor of what you really want. Now, that's where we get into the concept of the difference between wanting and, like I mentioned the other day, when you mentioned I forget who you mentioned, and I prefer, this is the question of, is it want or is it Ricky Martin, right? Now that's what everything, I guess everything in life comes, here we go again. Everything in life comes down to Ricky Martin. Hashem. Okay, so everyone knows who Ricky Martin is?
No.
You don't know Ricky Martin? Please get out. Okay, no, okay, so I go like this. I'm serious. No, okay, you can stay. Ricky Martin is a very famous scientist. And
He's a musician.
yeah, he's a musician. And one of the songs he sings, which one am I talking about? No. Ole Ole Zene, but you're singing the wrong tune, right? Is here we go.
Living the vida loca.
Ole Ole Ole. Go, go. Yeah. Do you really want it? Right, that's the question. Not do you want it, but do you really want it, right? That's what it comes down to. The difference between wanting something and now we have a different color so we can put it in, and really wanting something. 2 L's or 1? Just we're not sure. Okay, so do you want something or do you really want something? That's what it comes down to. Now, well, how will we know if you want or really want? If you want or want to want, then you're living a life where you're not doing it. If you really want, so then you're probably living that life. Now, interesting you say without having to put in the work. We have a conflict of interest because on the one hand, we want to be better at X, but on the other hand, we also want to sleep, right? And then we want to lose weight, but we also want to eat, yeah? A lot. We want to have a good relationship, but we also want to fight, yeah? In its case, right? We want to be happy, but we also want to be right. That doesn't work, yeah? And that's what the question comes down to. If you want to know, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy, right? I want both, right? Good luck. So where it comes down to is we have the conflict, we have the fight. And how do we know what's important to us, what's really important to us? What do we do? What do we do? So a person who wants something versus what they really want will be, the deciding factor will be, how do you live? How do you live your life? I want to tell you a story, which we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. I imagine you were here for this. We talked about, I forget who it was. I saw this, a great thing on Chas V'Shalom YouTube. There was this guy was awesome. I don't remember his name. It was I don't want to come off racist here, but I'm stating the facts. You'll see what I mean when I say it. Is a black preacher, street preacher. I don't know, it was like Reverend Rapp or something like that, yeah? And Reverend Street. Anyway, so he's a great story. And the story is that there was this fellow that went to a seminar to make money. And there was this money guru. This guy was like, knew everything, how to make the money. And he made the money. This guy, a very wealthy guy. And someone came to the seminar. And, you know, these type of seminars, you have all these type of people that are like, we want to make money too. You know, everybody's excited about it. And the guys, you want to make money? It's like, yeah, we want to make money. You want to make money? We want to make, right? So this one guy comes afterwards and says, I want to make money. Everybody left. They're like, yeah, you want it? He's like, yeah, I want it. He's like, yeah. He's like, I want to be just like you. He says, really? You want to be like me? He's like, yeah, I want to be like you. He's like, all right, meet me tomorrow morning, 4 a.m. on the beach. The guy's like, I'm there. So the guy next day wakes up, right? You know when you have important meetings, like things that are really important in life, not like Shacharis, like important things, right? So you get up early, right? You get up really early. Did anyone get nervous to fly? Anyone like that? Like in other words, you're going to miss your flight. Is anyone like that? Or am I the only one in the room? Yeah? Yeah, I used to be super crazy about flights in terms of, am I going to make it? I'm not going to make it. I would go super, super early. I once had an option of getting there 4 hours early. If either like two rides I can get 4 hours early or 10 hours early, right? And I took the 10 hours. I was like, because maybe the 4 hour thing, who knows? And my wife one night, she's like, is there an earthquake? And I was like, why? She's like, I feel like I was shaking, like I was like you know, like shaking my leg. I'm like, what time is it? Right? It was like, it's 9:04. What time is it now? 9:05, right? And I set alarms and I call it. You get up early, right? You don't want to miss it. It's important to you, assuming it's important. So the guy, 4 a.m., he's up at 2 a.m. He's already getting ready, he's getting dressed, putting on a suit, he's getting ready. He goes down, he gets to the beach at 3:50. The guru is waiting for him, standing on the beach, ready. So he says, so you want to be rich? He's like, yeah, I want to be rich. He's like, you want to be rich like me? Yes, I want to be rich like you. He says, okay, see the ocean? He goes, I see it. Start walking in. He's like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, start walking in. He's like, listen, I put on a suit. You know, I'm like, I'm sorry, like, you want to be rich? He said, I want to be rich. Get in there. He's like, okay. He starts to go. Starts walking in. And it's like going up. He's like, oh gosh, why'd I wear a suit? It starts going up to his knees. And when he gets to his knees, he like turns around. He's like, okay. He's like, keep going. It's like, what do you mean? He's like, keep going. He's like, okay. Turns around and he keeps going. Has anyone ever been to the beach at like 4 a.m. or like late at night? Anyone ever gone in the ocean? Forget the fact that it's freezing.
It's dark.
It's scary. Like, listen to me, I get scared of these things. Now, my fear is planes and dark and water. So what happened, I started walking, imagine they come together, a plane in the dark water, right? So the guy starts walking more, and it gets up to his waist, and it's getting up to the thing, and he turns around, he's like, do you want to be rich? He's like, yeah, I don't want to learn how to swim, I want to be rich. He's like, you want to be rich, keep going. He's like, okay, and he keeps going, and it gets up to there, and it gets up to his shoulders. He's like, what now? He's like, keep going, and he gets up to his thing, and all of a sudden the water splits. Wrong story, sorry. Okay, that's what he said. And anyway, what happens, he goes that, and it gets up to his mouth, and he's like, what now? He's like, do you want it? Now the guy gets in the water with him. He's like, do you want to be rich? He's like, I want to be. He's like, then why are you stopping? Keep going. He's like, what do you mean, where? Right? And he's like, go. And it gets over his mouth, over his nose. It gets up to his eyes, and then the guy grabs him around his neck, puts him in a headlock, and puts him under the water. And then, you imagine, has anyone ever been in a fight in the water? Yeah? Scary, right? You know the tap out sign? It's like, hello, right? And he goes and he's putting him down and he's fighting with him. He's like, well, I'm sorry, watch your language, but he said, and what happens underneath? He's like, and then what happened finally, he's holding him underneath. He has him in a headlock. The guy didn't stand a chance. He's holding him underneath. And then what happens? His body starts to go limp. When his body starts to go limp, he lets him go. And the guy, his head pops up. And he takes this huge breath of air. He's like, what the blah did you do to me? Like, what's wrong with you? So he says to him, tell me. Now they're underwater, you don't see it, right? But he's like, tell me. They had underwater cameras. And he's like, tell me, when you were under the water, what did you want? What's that?
You want to live?
To breathe.
I wanted to breathe. Yeah? He wasn't thinking, I want to live, right? He's thinking, I want oxygen, right? And he said to him, when you want to be rich, as much as you want to breathe, then you'll be rich. Happens not to be true within Judaism, but let's say. Now the idea is, everybody hear what this means. Do you want something? It's like a nice little game, I want to be better. I want to lose weight. I want to daven, I want to learn, I want to get closer to Hashem, I want to get closer to God, I would like to delve more into my Judaism. I want it, I want it. I want it, but I also want to sleep. But I also want to do the things that I shouldn't be doing, and also, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you remember when we spoke last week, and we discussed a little bit of Rabbi Akiva, and we said the idea of, how come there are so few Rabbi Akivas? What was the answer? Because you actually believe the fact that you can be someone like that. Do you believe that you have the ability of being better than you are today? Do you believe that you can, even before you go and you do anything about it, do you at least believe that you can be different than you are today? If you don't believe it, doesn't matter who believes it. The only thing that matters is, do you believe it? And if you do believe it, doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Now we're starting, right? Okay, but let's see you believe it. I believe I can fly. I believe I can get there. I believe I can be greater than I am today. Great, so now go. Okay, I believe it, and now I'm gonna go for it. Do you want it? No. So if you don't want it, then forget about it. Even if you believe you can do something, what is it? I personally believe I can do a lot of things. I am what we call a balgaiva. I'm quite an arrogant man. So I believe I can do a lot of things. I do. I believe I can do many, many things. My wife even says to me, when I'm when she can't do something, I'm like, what, you can't do it? She goes, let me guess, you can do it. Is that right? Can you do it? I'm like, yeah, probably. Probably I can. I have, very high self-image, yeah? With good reason. Now, therefore, I'm very motivated to do things when I care. But what if I don't care? In other words, I believe I could climb Everest. I believe I can do it. I think it would take me time to train and learn how to breathe properly up there and not freak out and know how to climb and how to carry things, etc. Okay, I get it. It'll take time. I don't think I could do it today. But I think if I train for it, I can do it. But you know what? I don't care to climb Everest. So even though I believe, if I don't care, then what does it help believing? That make sense? Doesn't make a difference. So what about if I believe in something and I don't care, I don't want it, so then it doesn't matter. But now's the next stage. So a person says, I could be Rabbi Akiva. I could be the best person that I am. I could be better. Okay, now do you want it? Exactly. Like, I want it,
If it's there.
but I want it in theory. Do I want it in practice? Not necessarily. Now, what will change theory to practice? How can one change something from theory to practice?
Action.
Okay, action. Action. Now, before,
Desire.
Decision.
what's that?
Decision.
Okay, you got to make a choice. You got to make a decision.
You gotta reprioritize.
Reprioritize. Good. What'd you say? Commitment. Now, I think out of everything we just said, I think the first thing is reprioritizing, meaning to say, you got to work it out. You got to see, is it worth it or is it not worth it? In other words, understand, build up the basic knowledge of whichever area that is that maybe we're looking into. So if a person decides, let's say that person decides, I just want to use a generic thing that some of you can't relate to, but I can. Let's say a person wants to eat properly. Person wants to eat properly. I think we all in theory, I think everyone in theory, and others in theory practice, and fewer in practice, yeah? But we all in theory understand, yeah, you should probably eat healthy, yeah? So let's say a person decides they want to. What's the first thing they need to do if they want to start actually making it real? Stop it.
Figure out what it means to eat healthy.
Right? What does it mean to eat healthy? What are the benefits of eating healthy? What are the detriments of not eating healthy? Let's get an understanding of what we're dealing with over here. You see, if you don't understand what you're doing, so you could act on all you want, but if you don't even know what you're talking about or what you're doing, then what does it help you? It will help for a little bit, as much as you're pumped up and you're motivated, right? And we have those things when we act on things and we're pumped and we're motivated to do it, and we do it. How long does it last? Right? You mentioned about going to the gym, right? You go to the gym. We go to the gym, right? You have this idea, people get excited to go and they go. How long does it last? It lasts as long as you're motivated. When that motivation runs out, now what do? You stop doing it, right? We stop. Unless we have an understanding and a clear understanding of its value. If you can understand the value of something and really appreciate the value of something, so even if you're not motivated, you'll be more likely to do it than less likely if you don't have the value of it. Does this make sense? Does everybody get that? Figure it out, the value. So I've never taught this in this way, but I'm going to pull it out right now. I guess let's start with this. Number one is that a person has to figure out, that's the K, that's knowledge. You got to work it out. You got to have knowledge. If you don't have knowledge, then wanting something is a game, right? You have to understand that something is worth it, figure it out. This is where we get into cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis will only really be productive if you really understand the cost and you really understand the benefit. If you don't fully appreciate the cost and the benefit of something, so then the cost-benefit analysis is flawed, right? Makes sense? Person goes, it's worth it for me to eat chocolate because I get that there's sugar in it and it's not so good for me, the sugar. But even though that's not true, the taste is so good. So the taste being so good is worth me eating the chocolate. My friend, do you understand the impact of what sugar will do to you? I know America's lying and it doesn't do anything, but for those who do understand, what does it do? All right, so we understand, number one, it's addictive. Right? And a person goes and has sugar, that gets your brain needing it more, in which case it just builds to having it again. What happens with the sugars, right? It turns into fat, it stays in the body. So therefore just you start a cycle of wanting it and continue it and going deeper and deeper. But it tastes good. Okay, I got you, it tastes good, but do you understand the detriments? Yeah, it's sugar. No, do you understand the detriments? Of course, sugar. You get it? So we have our cost benefit, but he didn't say anything. It's a child's cost benefit. It's an immature cost benefit. Okay, so knowledge, work out the knowledge. So let's talk about in Judaism. Is it worth it? What you got?
Adam and Eve,
What about them?
same thing happened to them.
What happened?
They had the knowledge of the relationship with God. The choice was there, and they chose the fruit of the tree.
Why did they choose the fruit of the tree?
They were talked into it. They were offered benefits.
Yeah. So listen to this. You see, Adam and Eve is a beautiful example of what's going to bring us down. What I mean by that is, okay, we'll get into it more, but let me start it off. What was the mistake what was the biggest mistake that occurred in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden? What was the biggest mistake that happened with Adam and Eve?
They didn't wait.
What's that?
They were impatient.
Okay, give me more specific. Like what happened? Where can you point to say, if this wouldn't have happened, or if this would have been done differently, then everything would have been great? Does anyone know the story?
He blamed it on Eve.
Getting into the discussion.
Say again.
Getting into the discussion with the snake.
The fact, fantastico. For very quickly what happened, we know that Adam comes along and God, the Lord, spoketh to Adameth, sayingeth, don't eateth from the treeeth. Because if you do, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. So he goes then and says, okay, and then he tells Eve, at least according to Tifsach Chachamim, Bishop Shad and Rashi, comes and tells that what? He says, Eve, don't touch the tree. Don't touch this tree lest you die. Now the question is, what are you talking about? Don't touch the tree. That's not what God said, right? God said, don't eat from it. Adam then went along and added and said, don't even touch it. Now, that's not a problem for Adam to say such a statement. You're allowed to add boundaries. But there's a difference between adding boundaries and explaining that it's a boundary, and adding boundaries and having the person think that this is the actual problem. Everybody get that idea? A lot of times people say, like, okay, we got the Torah law, okay? But now we got these rabbinic laws. Like, what the heck? Like, we got enough laws as it is. What's with all these rabbis adding more things? That's for another discussion. But just the quick and easy of it is that the rabbis adding these things are not because they're like thinking and gathering together and saying, so, other rabbi, what do you think we should do today to make the Jewish people suffer? Right? That's not exactly. Some maybe are thinking that, but like going back to our other discussion. But others are not thinking that. In which case, when they're going there and they're setting these things up, what are they for? Generally speaking, they are safeguards, right? If you have a little creek, so perhaps you put a little fence. When you have Niagara Falls, it took them a while to get the point, but finally they put up a fence, right? If anybody knows Niagara Falls history of people jumping over in barrels, right? So in any event, it is the greater the danger, the greater the safeguard. However, I thought it says in the Torah that you're not allowed to add to the commandments. Doesn't it say, right, you familiar? There's a verse in the Torah that says you're not allowed to add to commandments. We have commandments, 613 commandments, you're not allowed to add to them. So how could they come along and add to them? I just want to first make a note. You're right, it says you're not allowed to add. But it also says you're not allowed to subtract. You know, a lot of people don't complain about that part, yeah? In any event, what does it mean when it says you're not allowed to add? It means you're not allowed to add Torah laws. But you certainly are allowed to add rabbinic decrees and laws. And the rabbinic decrees and laws, what's the difference between a Torah and rabbinic law? There's a vast difference between them. Although absolutely we follow a rabbinic law to the nth degree of a Torah law. Where do we get that from? That's a verse in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 11. Which spoketh the Lord and sayingeth, lo susser. You're not allowed to go and sway from that which the rabbis tell you, at least from the times of the Talmud, right? So in which case, I don't mean modern day, by the way. There are those that explain that, but I'm not even talking about modern day. I'm saying at least back in the day. The Rabbanans that we have today, the rabbinic edicts and laws that we have today have been in place since the times of the Talmud and further back are things that we are obligated to keep. But I don't want to do it, so don't do it. Do whatever you want. It's your life. It's now or never. You ain't going to live forever. You may as well live your life. Understand afterwards. Okay, so now, comes along Adam and he says, don't even touch the tree. Eve's like, all right, comes along the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination in the form of a snake. And the snake that walks, talks, and says, Eve, come on. Want some of that tree? No, I really shouldn't. Stop it. Stop it. I don't even know it. Who are you? Come on, you know who I am. I'm the snaky. Come on. You want a little bit of apple? You want a little, fig or whatever that stuff? Wheat? You want some wheat? Right, whatever exactly the fruit was, yeah? He goes, you want some of that? Come on, let me give you some of that. No, I can't. Why? What can't you do? I can't even touch the tree lest I die. Really? You can't even touch the tree lest you die? Come on, what you talking about? You could touch it. No, I can't. Oh, stop it, you. And he pushes her into the tree. And she touches the tree. And she doesn't die. She goes, oh my goodness, I didn't die. He goes, that's right. Want some of that fruit? Want some of that fruity fruit? I'll have some fruit. Let me get some of that fruit. Did you have some of that fruit? What was the mistake that Eve made?
Believing.
That she even responded to the snake in the first place. When the snake said, hey, Eve, what should she have done? Talk to the hand because the face ain't listening. And she should have just walked away. The biggest mistake, and ladies in the room, this is for the ladies in the room. Gentlemen, I apologize for giving away our trade secrets. Ladies in the room, when a guy says anything to you, it doesn't matter what. If you respond, it doesn't matter what, you've already lost. A guy goes to this, hey there, I lost my number, can I get yours? And then you go something like, oh, that's so ridiculous. Oh, you're so stupid. You just lost. Because now the guy would be like, I know I'm so stupid, but what am I supposed to do? And then she's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to call you stupid. It's over. You understand? Those conniving snakes. Gentlemen, I'm so sorry. All right, okay, you lost a couple of customers. Yeah, not you, I'm saying other people. Oh yeah, what's up?
But like, in many cultures, and including Judaism, like, I feel like the snake is misunderstood sometimes.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
But no, like,
Yeah, go ahead.
like, even in the parsha where, like, Moses leads the Jews out of Egypt, and to prove God, he throws a snake, and then the snake turns back into a staff, and like, I've even been told that that's supposed to represent like the breath of light, or the shot of light that went from like God into the universe and stuff like that, that pretty much spiraled things into existence. So you take that into consideration.
I don't know where you get that from.
You take that into consideration.
We can make up a lot of things and take them into consideration.
Sure.
Okay, go on.
It's something in the Kabbalah. But
Whoa.
so you have the snake, like the snake, yeah, evil inclination, or, God, intending them to eat from the tree in the first place. Because, like, even Rabbi Berger will say that, yeah, life would be great if, Adam and Eve just stayed in the Garden of Eden and, like, that was life, But I believe that them eating from the tree actually spiraled life into existence and caused us to be here today. And some will argue, like, well, look at the world today, like, why do you think this is better than the Garden of Eden? I feel like it gives us a chance to, to work and to grow as individual, souls, rather than to just be this one entity like it was to begin with. Because, like, if we were just, like, one entity from the beginning, like, I don't know, I feel like even if it was beautiful and awesome, it'd be boring. Like, there wouldn't be real point to anything.
Okay. So listen, there's a lot of things you just said, and they were heavy. The first thing I just want to comment on is that are you a math guy? You holding in calculus? You know calculus well?
No.
Right. You know what Kabbalah is?
Math.
Kabbalah is super calculus. To go and say, I want, and by the way, you could throw this back at me when I do this. You could totally throw it back at me. But to go and say that, I think it's somewhere in the Kabbalah that says something like this, that's like me saying, I think there's an integer somewhere in calculus that perhaps states something. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Before you ever want to begin Kabbalah, you got to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Once you get that clear, move on to the next. Once you get that clear, move on to the next. So once you learn 5 books of Moses, Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud, Jerusalem Talmud, Sifri, Sifra, learn everything that you have to do in this world, then we move on to Kabbalah, and perhaps we'll have an understanding. The whole Kabbalah is written in metaphors. It's written in stories, that the only way it can be understood is if you are mikabel, which is the word Kabbalah means. The word Kabbalah does not mean. I'll share with you just what it doesn't mean. I was I'm going to come back to your question in a second, or your statement. I was by my in-laws' house once, and I was bored. So what would anybody do if they're bored, right? I guess, I called the Kabbalah Center. So I called up Los Angeles. Right? There's a Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles, California. I called up, they're like, Kabbalah Center, right? I was like, hi, right? They're like, hello. I'm like, is Madonna there? Right? They must get that a lot, because the guy's like, Mrs. Madonna is not here. I was like, Mrs. Madonna, interesting, right? I thought she went with one name on purpose, but okay, yeah. Mrs. Madonna's not here right now. I said, okay, already he's frustrated at me. So I said, tell me, like, what's Kabbalah? Like, what is it? He goes, Kabbalah is seeing the beauty in everything. I shouldn't do this. It's not nice. So I'm going to do it. I don't know any of you well enough, so if I say something which insults you, so great. So, it's not my fault. I don't know you. And that is, I said to him, that sounds very feminine, that's very lovely, but what does that have to do with Kabbalah? Like, what in the world does that have to, he goes, listen. So I said, no, you listen. No, so I said, I have a question. I said, are you Jewish? He goes, of course I'm Jewish. My father's Jewish, like, of course I am. I said, okay. Tell me, have you ever learned Chumash? And he goes, have I learned what? I said, Chumash. Have you learned Chumash? He said, Bible. Have you ever learned the Bible? He said, oh, I've perused. I said, tell me, what does the word Kabbalah mean? Forget what is it. Just what does the word mean? It's a Hebrew word, right? And certainly you at least know the very basic of the definition of the word before we're going to get into its depths. What does the word mean? He said, I don't know. I said, let me enlighten you. It's a Hebrew word. Kabbalah, likabel means to receive. Why is it Kabbalah called Kabbalah? Because the only way you are able to have any understanding of what Kabbalah means is if you receive it from someone who received it. From someone who received it, going all the way back, and depending on how you want to focus now, but perhaps to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right, and even perhaps deeper than that. If you are not a person who has studied, to the extent, I'll show you how deep it goes, you might not appreciate what I'm going to share with you now. There was a fellow by the name of the Ari HaKadosh, the Arizal, of Yitzchak Luria. He lived from 1534 to 1572, quite a big Kabbalist. You've heard the name before, the Ari? And he was a very big Kabbalist. He lived in Safat. He was originally from Egypt. He died, if you paid attention to the years, he was 38 years old when he died, which is actually quite fascinating. There were a lot of great sages that died between the ages of 38 and 40. In any event, if you know the Ramchal, have you heard of Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, one of the foremost Kabbalists in the 1700s, 1706 to he lived from 1706 to 1746 in Padua, Italy, right? So we say 1707, 1746, so at 39 years old he died. And they say he was a reincarnated soul of Rabbi Akiva. If you know the story of Rabbi Akiva that we talked about, Rabbi Akiva started learning Torah at 40 years old. So what happened the first 39 years of his life? Say that the Ramchal was the first 39 years of his life. He fixed up what he didn't finish with, and therefore he ended up dying at 39 years old. And then the Ari, like we mentioned, 1534 to 1572, there was another big sage by the name of Rav Yosef Cairo. Rav Yosef Cairo is the author of the Book of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch. He lived from 1488 to 1575.
Also from Egypt?
He was originally from Spain. In 1488, as you mentioned, you're paying attention to the years, 1488 he was born, 1492 is the Inquisition, right? And he was chucked. And he actually ended up living in Greece for a little bit. I believe in Salonika, if I'm not mistaken. He ended up also eventually in Sfat, right? Quite a pretty holy city. In any event, my point of the whole story is like this. Rav Yosef Cairo was huge. He lived at the same time as the Ari, right? They overlapped. He lived before and after him. He was older than him. The Ari kicked Rav Yosef Cairo out of class. He saw that when they were studying Kabbalah, that he was falling asleep. It wasn't just like he was bored, right? His soul was not up to par to be able to handle what they were doing, and he kicked him out of class. He said, sorry, you're not ready for this. Not like, get out, but like, you're just not ready to do this. You have to be on the highest of levels for a person to even begin to understand what it means, Kabbalah. And that's why Kabbalah is written specifically in form of stories, etc., because it's written in a way that it's not just written out A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's written out in metaphor and ideas that you have to understand what's the nimshal. You can know the mashal without the nimshal, it doesn't help you. You can know the analogy, but if you don't understand what is coming to teach you, it doesn't really help. Okay, that was just a little tangent, just to understand what are we dealing with when we say the word Kabbalah. So I don't know, I never heard the idea before of saying the spark, etc., and perhaps even want to say, but what I can tell you is that if to come back at you with Kabbalah that I don't understand, or at least I can't tell you that I understand, that is, the snake is something which is representative of what we know as the Sitra Achar, which is Satan, at least in the Garden of Eden. And that's something which is not something which is positive, it is quite negative. When you say it's misunderstood, and then to use an analogy from another snake that's used, perhaps you can compare. However, at the end of the day, apparently it can't be compared. All of the sages tell us that the idea of the snake, which was a negative force, which unfortunately ended up becoming part of us. Once they partook of the fruit, or of whatever that fruit was, once they ate of the tree, so what happens is now where the snake used to be an external thing we used to fight outside of ourselves, it now became internal. and now became a battle of what we would now call, perhaps, if we're not familiar with it, called the conscience, right? That we have our back and forth. We have our saying on the one hand, do the right thing, do the wrong thing, right? Or maybe it's do the right thing, do the wrong thing. I don't know what voices you have, right? And if you have a lot of them, you should speak with someone. All right, but we have that these things are coming. The snake is something which is quite negative. And other than saying this, I don't know how more to go unless you would show me a source that says otherwise. This is something which destroyed us. Now to say, but look in the positive, not the negative, of where the world has now come that we can grow, etc., is just a misunderstanding of what the Garden of Eden was. If you want to say post facto, the world that we are in right now is then we can go and look at the positives, etc., that we can gain from it, I hear that. But the world was not created like that. God said something. If it was meant to be greater than it was, then God would have said it like that. God saying, don't do something, and then going and partaking of that, you can't say that that's something which is greater. Do you understand what I mean like that? God is infinite. God created the world. Everything that is coming from him. If he says, do this and don't do this, by doing the don't do's, that's something which is clearly going to be negative. If they would have not done the don't do, then it would have been much greater than it is today. Our whole purpose of existence now is to get back to Adam Rishon Kodem L'Chet. Everything we're trying to do is to get back to Adam before the sin. And we actually attained it, by the way, by Mount Sinai. Right? We attained that level. When we said, Nasa v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. This week's parsha, this week's portion. We're like, we are in, baby. We are in. We want to take this. We want to accept this. I want to share with you something which is very interesting, it's off topic. We are off. Stay with me now. There's an interesting idea that we find that, how do we find that there are some people that are not Jewish that decide they want to become Jewish? And you have other people that are Jewish and they decide that they don't want to be Jewish. Where does that come from? So I saw a beautiful, very interesting source for the first part. Second part I didn't see. I heard, I didn't see. The first part was, how do you have people that weren't Jewish that decided to become Jewish? Where does that come from? That a person who grew up their whole life not Jewish, but they decide they want to be Jewish, and not for someone they want to marry, but because they feel it. Where does that come from? So I saw the answer is like this. That at Sinai, when God came, we know the Medrash, very famous teaching, that what happened? God went to all the nations of the world and he asks, do you want my Torah? Everyone's heard this before? Sounds somewhat familiar? He goes, all the nations of the world do want my Torah. And every nation basically said, well, what's in it? And God said, what's in it? And when he ended up saying what's in it, they said, no, thank you, right? For one nation, it's don't kill. Don't kill, no thank you, we don't want that. Don't steal, no thank you. Now you have to look a little bit deeper into it because it's pretty funny. Why would they reject that? They know they shouldn't be killing and stealing. It's part of the whole world's guide and code of ethic. So why would they turn down the very thing that they're going to keep anyway? And by the way, many of the things are part of the 7 Noahide laws, so they're obligated to keep them anyway. So why not just accept it? Good question. I'm glad you asked. But let's move on. He goes and he says, each nation, do you want it? No. Do you want it? No. Do you want it? No. Till we all know they came to the Jewish people. Do you want my Torah? What do we say? Is it free? We'll take 2. And that's essentially what happened. Written Torah, oral Torah. And then we go and we accept the Torah. Now here's the question. Do you think that when God went to all the nations, that every single person in the nation said, we don't want it? It wasn't that everybody said they don't want it. It was overwhelming majority of every nation said they didn't want it. Therefore, what happened? They didn't accept it and it wasn't given to them. But there were those that wanted it and said, yeah, we do want this. Sorry. Wasn't accepted by your nation. Moving on. Now, this is what I didn't see, but I'm going to share with you anyway. And if I'm wrong, so then chuck it. The people that want to leave Judaism, you think that the entire Jewish people wanted it? There were perhaps those that didn't necessarily want it, but they were part of the nation. Now that I didn't see. And not only that, I have a kasha on that because it seems to be like it says all the Jewish people. But in any event, let's look at the first part. Those people that wanted it, but were still part of the other nation and didn't end up coming, those souls later on in history are the reincarnated souls, and therefore they feel connected to it, and that's why they want to come and they want to join. Fascinating. Anyway, back to our program. So now we find the concept of Eve's mistake was, this is the first off, and we're going to come back to, do you really want it? What Eve shouldn't have even responded to the snake. The biggest problem that we get ourselves into is that when we have an evil inclination, when we have something which starts to drive us to maybe do something, that we even give it the time of day. We have to immediately jump off it. If you have an evil inclination and comes and says, maybe you should, no, thank you, bye, take it later. Or not even no thank you, just walk away. Just walk away. Don't even respond, no conversation. Okay, I think there's another level. Another level is perhaps if, let's say you know you're stuck, you're going to get into a conversation, so you got to know how to talk. Got to know how to talk. I'll give you an example, and the example again is going to be with food because that's what I love. So let's talk about chocolate cake. But not even cake, just chocolate. But in the shape of a cake, but it's just chocolate. And you have like the fondue thing. No, the fondue like fountain things. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about? The fondue things.
Fountain?
Yeah, chocolate fountain. You put under it like marshmallows or steak, right? It's whatever. You put anything. Yeah, your head, right? I've done that. And anyway, you got chocolate, right? And what happens when you're walking by that chocolate, and we all know, we know how it works. You walk by, they call your name, and you say, I shouldn't, and it says just once, and you say fine, and before you know it, you're full of chocolate. This is not an analogy. And basically, I go ahead and I'm like, me personally, I'm like, what should you do? So number one, you should just walk away, right? Don't put yourself in that situation, right? Stay away. The pasuk, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, make for yourself a fence, a boundary. Don't even get close to it. Okay, but you fell already. It's right in front of you. What are you going to do? It's right in front of you. You're already in the conversation. They called your name. You accidentally bumped into it with your mouth, right? And like, so what do you do now? What do you do now, right? Okay, enough about me. So what do you do? So at this point, you have to maybe have the conversation and say the following. Let's call a spade, okay? Listen, Cake, I'm going to be honest. You look fabulous. I'm not going to lie, you look great. You look absolutely wonderful. And it's not that I don't want to partake of you. I want to partake of you. I want to partake. But I really can't. Exactly. We could still be friends. Okay, I'll come visit you at another wedding or something. But the idea is that basically speak it out and say, Cake, listen, I really do. I love you. I'm going to be honest. I love you, but we can't go on like this. Now, if you say we can't go on with it, that's not true. You can. So don't, be honest. I can eat you, Cake. And I want to. But really, please, again, understand this is clearly, don't fill in blanks. I'm talking about Cake, yeah? Because I know this can be taken in many ways, right? My darling, you look wonderful tonight. Red velvet cake. And you say, like, I do want to eat you. You look delicious. You look, I can't say nutritious, but you look delicious. And I know you're going to taste great. But I also know I'm going to feel miserable afterwards. You're going to break my heart. You're going to break my heart. You're just going to come, and then before you know it, I'm just going to be full of you. And I'm not going to be able to get rid of it. I'm going to want to get rid of it, but I can't, and I'm going to be stuck with you. Therefore, Cake, I want to eat you, but I'm not going to. Speak it out. If you don't speak it out, what happens? It nails you. Amazing. Gosh, there's not enough time to... Not even talk about this anymore. It's not. Once we get involved in Cake, there's no going back. So it's all about understanding. Shlomo Melech says an amazing statement. He says, "B'chol eisihu b'godecha levanim." At all times, your clothing should be white. At all times, your clothing should be white. And the Medrash says, interesting in Parsha Vayikra, when it says, what does it say? Adam ki yakriv mikem korban laHashem. When a man brings a korban, a sacrifice to God. This is not enough time to do it. What day is it? Wednesday? Okay, we'll talk tomorrow about the whiteness and things. Okay, let's finish up this idea. Number one is, do you really want it? Do you really, really want it? How do you get to a stage where you really want something? So number one is the idea you have to believe in the fact you can actually do something. After you believe that you could do something, is that you have to try to go and figure out the value of something. Is something valuable? Is it valuable to be in this relationship? Is it valuable to go and not eat this food? Is it valuable to be in this business? Is it valuable to be in this community, in this school, in this religion, in this, etc.? Is it valuable? Now that takes time. That takes time. A person to figure that out, you got to really think. Sorry. You got to work. A person who actually comes to let's say you come to the conclusion that it is valuable. Good. Now we get into the fact of what you said, and that's number two. Number two is once you get the knowledge of something, so number two is now you have to get into the idea of that you have to start acting upon it. You have to get action. Because just having knowledge of something, this doesn't really help. We've discussed this in other classes, which is really, this class is called KAW. That's just an acronym, KAW. Now what is KAW? That's K-A-A, and we're going to spell that out. Number one is knowledge. You got to work it out. Number two is action. When you act upon that which you know, it starts to become part of you. Everybody get that? Now, truth is, when you act upon anything, it starts to become part of you. Even if you don't know it to be true, and even if you think it's false. When you act upon something, even if you think it's false, eventually it starts to become part of you. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Has anyone ever been in a relationship which they didn't feel was a good relationship? Yeah? Okay, one of you. Okay, everyone will live vicariously. Oh, two. Okay, yeah? Now, if you've ever been in a relationship before you don't think it's a good relationship, now, as long as you're not physical with the person or you haven't really invested so much time in it, so then you might be able to get out. What happens when a person starts investing time in something and starts maybe perhaps even getting physical? Now, this is really, it's not fair. It's not fair because physical is a whole other discussion, but when someone starts investing in something, so what happens? Is it, what?
You don't want to leave.
Why not?
You invested time.
Right? Now, you're not thinking in your head, I don't want to leave because I invested time. Right? You think, I don't want to leave because I'm connected with this person. You say, but don't you know they're bad for you? Right, you have abusive relationships. Now, generally, at least the way it's looked at, is that it's a man, let's say, abusing a woman. But it could be also a woman abusing a man verbally as well as physically. But let's go with the classic unfortunate situation of a physical relationship where a man, let's say, abuses a woman. And the woman stays with the man. There could be a lot of reasons. One is because they're scared, right? Let's say they're not scared. Finances. Let's say finances are an issue. Right? You have times when people are not scared and finances are not an issue. So why do they stay? Because I love him. Why do you love him? He's horrible. I know, but really, he can get better. He can. But he said to you he can't and he won't. I know, but he just doesn't know. Right? Right. That makes sense. When you invest in something, when you put into something, that becomes a part of you. Classic Rav Dessler, ahav ahav, right? When you give towards something, you become to love that thing, no matter what it is. When you act upon something, it's dangerous. Be very careful what you invest your time in. Because no matter what you invest your time in, you're going to become connected to that thing. No, stop it. I know it's not true. I know it's bad. I know it's not real. I'll be able to get out of it. I've never heard somebody say that before? I'll be able to. It's okay. I understand the dangers. Therefore, I could do such a thing, and I'm okay. Maybe you know Shlomo HaMelech. He also said that, right? And Shlomo HaMelech himself, the sages tell us, Solomon ended up sinning. Nobody's safe. Careful what you act on. Number two, action. But let's say you act upon something you actually know is true. Fantastic. So now you're putting everything in line. You understand it's true. You worked it out. It has value. I'm acting upon that which I know. Now, when a person goes ahead and acts upon that, we're going to leave the third one out for today. But when a person goes ahead and you have knowledge and you act upon that thing, now it starts to become real. Does this make sense? Number one, you got to believe. There can be miracles, right? When you believe. Number two, even if you believe, you don't see the value, what does it help? Okay, figure out what the value is. Figure out what you should have value in, right? Then once you have figured out what you have value in, now if you get to the stage, now it starts to change from wanting something, wanting to want something, to wanting it, and then from wanting to really want it, when you start putting it in play, start putting it in action. I really want to eat healthy. I really want to become a better businessman. I want to be a better spouse. I want to be a better child. I want to be a better parent. I want to be a better sibling. I want to be a better neighbor. Okay, let's start putting that into action. I want to be a better driver. I want to be a safer driver. I want to be a more calm driver. Okay, this is crazy. Let's not go there. But the idea is, when someone starts putting it into play, then things start to change a little bit. Okay, there's a lot more to this, and we're going to have to continue with God willing tomorrow. Please remind me if you're going to come tomorrow about the Shlomo Melech and white. Very important. Okay, until next time, people, any questions, comments, stories, jokes, attacks before I end this? Hit it.
What is it?
You started off with the heroin thing,
Yeah.
and then never got back to it.
Yeah, you want to talk about heroin? So heroin, no, what I was talking about the heroin thing is that when I asked, does anyone really want to do better than they are doing today? And I said, baloney, you don't, because if you did want to do better today, you would be doing better today. And this particular guy was doing better than he was, right? He had worked on himself to get over a heroin addiction, in which case, that's insulting that I said to him, you didn't really change, you didn't really want it, right? So therefore, if you are that person who is on heroin, and you are still on heroin, then you really didn't change. If you're not on heroin, fantastic. All right, so back to the original thing, then that's when I say, does anyone here want to be different than they are today? Do you want to be better than you are today? The answer is No, because if you did, then you would. Now, maybe some of you are because you're step by step growing, in which case, then you are. Fantastic, you're on the track. The question is, though, what level of the track are you on? Are you on like the lowest level of the track, or have you raised the roof a little bit? Are you on the elliptical on 1, where you're just like going like this, or do you move it up to 8, which really is not so hard either, right? Depends which level you have and which one you buy. $700 one's not going to get you too much. Let's say $2,500, that already is moving. 8 already is a little bit more resistance. Okay, let's talk about that another time. So this is where we're coming over here, is that a person goes ahead and do you really want it, or do you just want it? Okay, anyone? Yeah, what you got?
What does the next A stand for?
Oh, yeah. I know, it's always good to leave people hanging. Peer pressure, okay. The last A is, right, it's a little message that they send. No one knows what it is. If anyone knows what I'm talking about. Okay, what's the last A? In a nutshell, the last A, and I really didn't do the whole thing justice. Ka is a whole discussion, but I'm just doing it just for those people because I'm falling to peer pressure. Let's say you know something is true, and you act upon that thing. How come there are times when you know something's true and you're acting, yet you're still not connecting with it? You get a person, let's say within Judaism, you know there's Hashem. You're even acting upon it. You're keeping mitzvos. You put on tefillin, let's say. You daven. You're like hands, you keep Shabbos. I know, and I'm doing. It's just by rote.
Yeah.
What's the third A?
Accepting? No.
You saw it in my face, huh? What's the third A? Come on, you're on a roll here. You've been rocking that thing. What?
Actualizing?
That's number 2. That's action, right?
Awesome.
It is awesome. But what's the third A? Well, let's think about it. You said it. Figure it out, people. I'm not telling you. Figure it out. What did she say? You said, I know something's true. I'm acting upon it, but I'm doing it by rote. When you do something by rote, in other words, when you just do it out of habit, then what are you lacking when you do something by habit?
Acknowledgement?
What are you lacking?
You're looking the soul of it, the heart.
All right, I'll tell you. You're lacking the soul. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't really work there, right? You're lacking. Oh, who said it?
Awareness.
Fantastic. Awareness. What does that mean, awareness? If you go and you daven, you go to Shachris in the morning, you pray, right? If someone goes to pray, I put on tefillin, I put on my phylacteries, I stand in front of God and I daven, I cry. Oh my God, do I cry? Right, let's say I go and I pray. Right, I'm doing my thing and I'm praying away. Now, this depends on your background. You look to me like we have a similar enough background that I could ask this question. Have you ever davened Shmona Esrei before?
Are you asking?
No. Have you ever davened Shmona Esrei? Yeah? Okay, yeah, the real question is probably no, neither have I. But okay, you've davened Shmona Esrei. Have you ever done the following? Have you ever, when you finished, yeah, there you go. Have you ever, when you finished praying, when you finished davening, or perhaps you're in the middle, have you ever been doing your thing? You're doing like this, right? Because this is what every man does. This is what every woman does. And you're doing your thing. And in the middle of prayer, you're like, where am I? I don't even mean in the Shemona Esrei, geographically, right? We totally lose our consciousness of where we are. Have you ever finished praying and you're like, did I say Yalav Yavo? And you're like, oh, you do it again. You're like, then when you finish, did I say Yalav Yavo? And then again, you're like, is it Rosh Chodesh, right? It's not even, right? So what happens is we lack awareness. We live our lives and we're doing things. We love our spouses and we even tell them, but we do it in such a beautiful way. You know, when you go, love ya. It's so deep. It's so nice. Such a connection. Love ya. Isn't that deep? And then you wonder, why don't I have a good relationship with my spouse? Are you aware of what you're doing? Are you even paying attention? So number one is you got to know. But knowledge is not enough because we know a heck of a lot of things that doesn't change our lives at all. We got to start acting upon that knowledge. And that starts to make things move a little bit. But if you're not aware, it doesn't help you. Therefore, you got to be even aware of it. There, fell to the peer pressure. Okay, people, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you when I see you. Don't take care. Bye-bye.